Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here. This intro is to unfortunately let you know that the audio you are about to hear once again has audio issues because I suck at recording things apparently. Also not to worry, my voice doesn't sound like this. I recorded this interview 2 weeks ago with Erik. It's a great interview, he has some very interesting things. I apologise and beg forgiveness for the audio quality. I'm going to let you know right now, when I do my interview with Chuck next week, it's going to have the same audio issues because I'm an idiot. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and for the first time, I am releasing the entire interview as one long chunk. I think this one's 2 hours, and Chuck's is 3. Enjoy this, consume it at your own pace because it's all there for you, right from day one.
Hello everybody, it's Glass Half Dead here once again with another, I'm going to say winner, it's a bit dubious, but winner of one of his Adepticon pods. This is Erik, who was a dirty communist player, or Tao if you prefer that. Erik, do you want to say hello?
Hi. So yeah, so you're absolutely right. I did play Tau, but I played 3 different factions across the 4 pods that I competed in. I did play Tau in 2 of those because they're more competitive in the meta than the other 2 factions. But I also played Drukhari and Thousand Suns as well.
Now, if I recall, did you begin your kill team journey with Drukhari?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I have a couple other ones that I would play, but in general, probably Drukhari was my first faction.
Okay. And you also played, we're not talking about this mainly, but you also played at LVO, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, I also did play at LVO as well.
And lost to Michael? Am I remembering that?
Yes, so LVO, I played the Drukhari, obviously the whole thing, it was just one tournament. And I lost to Michael right before he went on to play Miguel, I think is the name. Right before he went to play Miguel, and that was a tough match.
Yes, everyone that plays against him agrees. He's like the best. So, yeah. Anyway, Adepticon. So you played Tau, Drukhari, and Imperial Guard, did you say? Sorry?
Thousand Suns.
Thousand Suns. Don't know why I said Imperial Guard. Which of those 3 did you actually end up winning the pod with?
So I won the pod with 2 of the 3, both the Tau and the Thousand Suns. Um, the and then with the Drukhari, I came in second, and that's because I fell to Chuck's Necrons. It's one of the interesting things is there are definitely factions that do better in the competitive meta, but I think Elliot pointed this out in that there's a lot of variation in sort of who you get to play and who you line up against and what the mission is too, right? You could have, say, a strong, Tau army or a Necron army, and if you play positionals against the Necrons, Chuck will be the first to tell you that it's really difficult for him to win, right? And if you play on a shooting map but you're an assault team, you're also going to have a tough time. And one of the things they did with the terrain was kind of interesting. I'm looking around because I'm trying to find a piece of the Sector of Mechanicus terrain so I can illustrate. So they had these large pieces. I mean, they really just used the terrain set that came with the box set for the original kill team. But if you can imagine the smaller pieces, you weren't allowed to go through these windows, even the ones on the little small scatter terrain. So even the windows that are cut off, half destroyed. So if you're playing an assault army, you'd actually have to run around all those L-shaped pieces to get to anyone, or go up and over them. And normally you'd think, 2 inches is not a lot to go up and jump down, but if you're making a charge, taking 2 inches off your charge is actually a pretty big deal. So that's another thing. So I'd say with Drukhari, it was a little bit harder. As Elliot pointed out, the terrain was very dense. If you can run through those windows, or if you can jump over stuff, then it's okay. But adding a couple inches to climb up and down, each one of those things made it a little more difficult to get those early charges.
Okay, fair enough. So, well, unfortunately, I always think of Drukhari as actually being a relatively strong team. But unfortunately, you've lost twice with them now. So maybe they're not as top tier as I thought originally. Um, but moving on quickly before we get into that, how many games did you actually play? Were you there for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or just 2 or 3? Or
I was there for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Sunday pod, I just actually was trying to help them out. They were one person shy. I actually hadn't had any time to sort of look around the con, and I wanted to do that because if you play 2 pods in a day, it's pretty much the whole day. You're constantly in kill team. And so I took the time, took Sunday off, and wanted to look around, but they were short, I think, 1 player, and it would mean, basically someone not having an opponent. And so I jumped in and played a game there, but that didn't count. I didn't compete. I just showed up. But I think my name shows up under there. So if someone sees that, I didn't actually compete in the pod. Yeah, mostly 4 pods. So I think it's 3 games per pod that you play. And it's interesting, both Chuck and I agree that the hardest game in the pod is usually the second game, which is odd. You'd think it'd be the third, but what they do is I think they call this sort of like a Swiss pairing thing, where they would take the 2 players with the highest points and have them match up for round 2. So if you maxed out your points in round 1, which was not unusual for most of the competitive players that did win their first games, you get played with the next most competitive player, typically in that pod, and then your final game would be against someone maybe just a little bit below or equal to that level. But oftentimes the second best player was in that second.
but that is, as you alluded to, just an issue with the Swiss format in general, isn't it?
I'm pretty new to this thing, but you definitely do. If you get a high point score, you definitely do line yourself up to play the best players earlier on instead of later in the tournament. So I think someone could probably make the case that it might be to your benefit to try to game that. But in this tournament, where everything is based on battle points, it's actually not to your benefit to do that, because if you sort of gimp your points, or intentionally underscore, you'll actually lose to the front runners that'll have more points because they're trying, like Elliot, for example, is trying to max out every game. So you'll win your pod still, and maybe you'll get an easier road to the final, but you won't win the big prize.
Quick note there while you mention it. Do you know if there was actually an overall winner for?
Yeah, there wasn't. There was no grand tournament or GT, which is what they've got set up for Nova. So a really good way to kind of compare the two is if you look at the Nova organization and what they're doing for the tournament coming up in August, is they have a GT, and which is sort of a grand tournament where there's just one single winner. But then they also have these sort of pods on Thursday and Friday, which are sort of a run up to the GT. And then in addition, a narrative game, which I think is a fantastic idea for the maybe less competitive armies in the meta, so that people can play their favorite faction. But in this case, there was no narrative play. There were just pods. No overall winner. I never played against Elliot. I played against Chuck. I played against a couple other guys who had won their pods in prior days, including a Gene Stealer cult player who had defeated Chuck in game 2. But I didn't run into George Rollins either with his Gellerpox. So there were some of the more well-known competitive players, at least in our small community, that I didn't get an opportunity to play against.
Well, I mean, as you say, I assume that each. So you were put into a pod of 8 people twice a day for 2 days, right? Uh, well, maybe you don't know, but were the pods completely randomized between the days and the events? So in theory, you could have actually gone into an identical pod.
Absolutely, yes. So mostly randomized. I mean, it's hard for me to say completely because players might not show up and other players would come in. So I think that was their intent initially, and then of course with the no shows, the dropouts, they had to make adjustments to the pod. I know that if you were a part of a team, they tried. They said that they would try not to put you together in the same pod, but the fact of the matter was there weren't a full 64 people or they usually tend to get around 30. I want to say in the 30s or 40 people, but they didn't have enough to form the full number of the 8 pods they wanted to make, so they weren't able to always sort of honor that commitment. We did make Elliot and I did try and make a team at the last minute, LVO vet, and we just threw it on there because we were really interested in playing other people and different armies in the meta that we don't really see. Like I play Chuck all the time, you know, so it'd be nice to just. It's not an issue of trying to avoid people. It's just you'd like to play other factions, right? I mean, Chuck plays Necron, so that's a lot of Necron playing. It'd be nice to kind of play somebody else.
No, I completely agree. I mean, certainly in my local game store, if I want a game against Tyranids or Grey Knights, I'm sorted. Game against anything else, I have to build and make a team and ask somebody else to play it. So yeah. So your first pod, were you Tau?
Yes, so I kind of had a strategy going into this. Tau Tau frustrates a lot of players,
No. What?
both in 40k if you get the first manage, you get the first turn, and then also in kill team. And I was discussing this with a couple of players, and I figure out why. It's just because Tau, if they do well, they don't allow you to play, meaning that they remove your model so quickly. I think players feel that their opportunity to even compete is taken away from them. Whereas Poxwalker spam is extremely more effective than say Tau drone spam, but you get a chance to play. You're not going to win, right? It's going to be trying to beat up on a bunch of Superman herd of zombies, and you'll lose slowly, right, through essentially attrition. But you will get to play. Like you'll get an opportunity to fire your guns, do your psychic powers, make your charges. You'll fail, but you'll get to do it. Whereas with the Tau, generally what happens is if I'm doing well, in many cases, I can deny a player to do that opportunity with some of their better models that they probably enjoy playing with.
So
That's what
quickly, what was your roster? And what was your thought process into what you would take into each game before we jump into the games themselves?
Sure, there are a couple different rosters from Tau that I took. There was the standard 3 rail rifle roster with sniper, demo, and then a Shazui fire warrior with a pulse rifle as the leader, and the rest filled out by a complement of gun drones, plus or minus maybe 1 shield drone and a grab and hit drone. And of course the must take recon drone. That's pretty much the standard list, and that list has been around since the inception, I think, of Kill Team with the Tau, and it's been known to be sort of a brutal competitive list. What I did was, after talking to Chris, he was the Geller Pox winner, or well, the 3rd or 4th place winner at LVO. Is that now that they've included the Kroot, so the Kroot wasn't part of the meta at the time LVO had started, but you can actually take a Kroot carnivore as the leader. So what's great about that is a couple of points. One of my lists, sorry to get back to your question, was to take that Kroot carnivore as a leader, only take 2 specialists, which is borderline kill team heresy to actually not take a 3rd specialist. and then fill out the rest with gun drones, and of course the recon drone and or a shield or grab inhibitor drone like before. And that actually gives me an opportunity to get in a couple more drones. It's important because it makes sense because the taking 3 rail rifles sounds great, but you're only hitting on 4s. And you've got a recon drone and you've got a comms guy. So you can buff one of them down to 3s or 2s, depending, but you don't have enough buffs to buff all 3 guys. You have enough, the sniper's got his own ability. So you have enough to buff a couple of guys. That third guy is usually always hitting on 5s or 6s. And if he's demo, then which is the specialty that I drop when I take the other list, he's going to be hitting a mortal wound on a 5-up because of the demo special. So that's a problem because you're losing your multi-damage output from that rail rifle. Anytime you trigger that mortal wound, you lose the ability to do the D3 damage and get a better chance of taking the model out of action. So those are the two. Those are pretty much the 2 lists I ran. I had a couple of fluffy lists that I never got around to running. But yeah, that's it. They're pretty standard.
Quick question then regarding the grav inhibitor drone. For anyone that doesn't know, I believe that reduces the an enemy within 12 inches by 3-inch movement. Is that right?
D3. So it's actually a pretty huge radius. It's a 12-inch radius. So I usually would park him right in the middle of the board, and he'd have a 12-inch radius, and any model beginning their charge within that radius suffers minus D3 inches to their charge roll. Which
And would you say that is a must take in your list? How many times did it save your guys?
I took it with all of my lists. I would say that I wouldn't say it's a must take, but I would say it does do work against assault heavy armies. It did make a big difference in one of my games. So the Gene Stealer Colt player who defeated Chuck, I played afterwards for the 3rd game, or I think it was the 2nd game. He lined up with Chuck in the 1st game, and he, as you know, Gene Stealer Colts and the Colt move and all that, they tend to lend themselves to a fairly heavy assault component, if not. Obviously, they have a fire line, but there's definitely a front line of assault Gene Stealers, and I don't know all the names of the different pieces because I don't play them, but I noticed when he declared his list, when he showed me his roster, he had quite a few of those. So I threw in a grab inhibitor. I did the same thing against orcs as well, another assault heavy army. It made a big difference in the GSC game. His leader made an assault, so it was probably, I want to say, a 7-inch assault. He rolled a 7 exactly to make it. The grab inhibitor drone removed 1 or 2 inches, and he just missed a charge by about an inch, which put him out the open and allowed me to get cut off the head on turn 1 with a rail rifle. So had he made that charge, I would not have been able to target him. And well, drones are just about useless in close combat. So chances of me taking would have been
turn 1,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
So it actually mattered. The orcs, it helped as well. Probably wasn't clutch like it was against the Gene Stealer Colts, but it did stop a couple of charges from making it.
Okay, interesting. And then, as you said, the rest of the list was very much just drones, snipers, specifically with rail rifles. You're not an iron rifle guy?
No, it doesn't. I think iron rifles do have a place, and you probably could run them effectively. I think it was one of those things where I didn't have anything I could do with the extra points. So when I downgraded the iron rifle, especially with only specialists, I don't get enough points back to really add something to that list. And so it doesn't make sense to take the hit on the iron rifles.
Okay, fair enough. So, continuing with the Tau, because I've just had the stroke of genius that we're going to make this first half the Tau half, and then we'll talk about
Okay.
the other 2 in the second half. Do you want to run down some of your games? Matches you found difficult, matches you thought were actually incredibly easy, matches where it was tight, you had the luck of the dice, anything like that?
The Tau, what makes a great meta army? and I'll get back to Tau because this is an important point. Whether you're playing Tau or you're going to play Death Guard or Tyranids, or even in Chuck's case, Necrons, what makes a great army is really consistency of results. And what that means is, similar to Elliot, I didn't have swingy kind of games with the Tau. It's fairly consistent. Sure, I had games with good luck. The Gene Stealer game, I did have good luck. I had removed 4 to 5 of his models in the first turn, which means a lot of those drones hit their mark and he failed his saves. They only have guardsman saves. But in general, I had really bad luck games too. But luckily, the Tau have enough redundancy in the drone and the shooting and the positionals that you're allowed to absorb this sort of bad luck waves, and they don't tend to ruin your whole game if you're clever and I'd say aggressive but carefully aggressive with your play. And I think the same thing holds even more so for the Death Guard, and I think Tyranids are probably in a similar position with Tau, where if you're careful about your play, you are less affected by the swings in luck. Just as a counterpoint, the Dark Eldar are the opposite. They can be in all Eldar. I think even Michael's team, when Chuck plays Eldar, he has the same problem. If the Eldar miss their shooting turn 1 against the Dark Eldar list, they're going to get throttled by a bunch of Dark Eldar witches running into them and taking, T3 models. If they make those shots, they're pretty good shooters. They tend to make a lot of shots. They do really well. Dark Eldar are the same way. You have the combat drugs you roll at the beginning of the game. They can have a huge impact on the game. As you might know if you've ever played Drukhari, this 4 would be fantastic. Even Strength 4 would be great. Those things make a really big difference in the outcome of some of your combat. The movement and the number of attacks, maybe not so much, but the combat drugs can actually make a pretty big difference. Your Dark Lance, if it doesn't hit and you roll 2 1s, that's a big deal. You need that gun to hit because it's one of only two of the good guns you have that can really consistently remove models from the board. So unfortunately, I don't have a Talon where I didn't have anyone that was super competitive. I didn't have any games that went down the line. I didn't get top score, but I was only a couple points off the first pod. I got 47, 48 points. I think the winner got 50. And I know there was confusion early on whether they were doing it. And I didn't try hard enough to maximize all my points. I'm not sure I would have caught up with them, but I might have been able to grab a couple more points. The next time I played Tau, the next day in the evening, I actually intentionally tried to maximize my point. And I did maximize the first 2 games. The third game, we ran out of time. The gentleman I was playing against was late number 1 by almost 10 minutes to the pod. And then his wife was there telling me, he was going to be there as soon as he could or whatnot. So there was that. Then he was really particular about certain things. Like if you put your counters, they had the counters staying where the guys were ready. It had to be really close to your model so he'd see them, and he would request you to move them another 1/8 of an inch close, or tiny amount close to the model. I have to talk about this because
Please do. Yeah.
insanity, the kind of things. So if you can imagine, I wish I had, but if you can imagine, he's playing Imperial Guard, and it's 100% shooty. It's very common, but it's a mixed list. He's got flamers, he's got hotshot guns, he's got a couple plasma, but he has decided, he's turn 1, he gets initiative, and he has decided he's going to set his guys all the way near the back line and just shoot me. And nobody's moving anywhere. He's going to try and ready as many models. Common, plasma spam guard kind of thing. So that makes sense. Meanwhile, I've got a bunch of drones lined up on my deployment line. That's it. I haven't gone yet. Remember, he's got initiative. He's first turn move. He's readying his guys, and he's asking me, well, do you agree that this guy sitting behind a pipe can see that you're drone here? And I said, well, I was kind of confused because I haven't moved yet. So I said, well, I mean, I went down and looked. It felt rude not to, and I just said, well, he can see him, but I haven't moved yet. Like he won't be there next turn. I'm not going to let you shoot him with that fellow next turn because I need to advance up the field. I'm not going to hide from you, but I'm definitely going to move. So I'm not sure this is as important as maybe you might think it is. He rebuffed my efforts to convince him otherwise. He did that again with 5 other models. It gets better. Oh no. Oh no, it gets better. Then he's asking me my honest opinion, and my mistake was just telling him what I thought. And so at one point I said, I can't see that guy if you want my honest opinion. He stops the game. He walks over to the players next to us, interrupts their game, asks that player if he would come and take a look, and then kind of be the arbiter between two of us on whether that my drone was in line of sight, ready to dive on turn 1. And so the player was kind enough to come over, probably not realizing the absurdity of the situation, and gave his opinion. Of course, he took another 3 minutes because we're looking through 7 pipes and 3 windows. You know how this goes, right, with the kill team. So after, and I didn't say anything, but I'm just like, I thought I was in like Bizarro Land or something where nothing makes sense and there are too many mirrors and like, so I stopped I stopped saying anything about his targeting. I just said, we'll just take it how you call it. Whatever you call it sounds great. I think he was a little put off by that, but I just needed to get the game going. Turn 1 comes and goes, but during that turn, he does the same thing, but now that I've moved, he's asking for line of sight again. He goes and asks the player. Now it gets kind of important because he's trying to attack rail rifles with hotshot volley guns, and I have to actually say, I don't think you can. He goes and asks the player 2 more times in turns 1 and 2 to do the exact same thing. And then he makes a comment to me when they mention that we're getting close. It's like 12 minutes, 14 minutes left or something in the middle of turn 2. Like, it's not going to happen, right? And he says, well, we've got a little slow play here. And he looks at me and I'm just, it's kind of, your eyelids like twitching because you're trying not to just explode on him. And I took a breath and I said, with all due respect, sir, you were 10 minutes late and you've now interrupted a player 3 times for line of sight, decisions that either we could have made or rolled off against. One of which was before I'd even moved my men, my models, and he was quiet after that. But as a result, Elliot was kind of, Elliot and I had made an agreement that I told him, I said, okay, I'll try to max this last tournament. I was going to play Drukhari again for fun, but he said, no, you should try to max it. So I did with Tao, and they cut this game. It was dice down not even the middle of turn 3. I'd gotten to shoot a couple models, and this same player then says to me, when the judge asked for our scores, right, and it's I don't know, the score was like whatever 13. I'd gotten 1 point at that point, so it was like 13 to whatever 5 or 6. Don't quote me on the score. I knew I was going to win, so I stopped counting. Finish the game, pardon me. But he says to the judge, oh yeah, but I didn't even get a chance to shoot this turn. And I'm like, dude, you are not going to catch up from whatever 5 or 6 points to 13 or 14 by shooting this round. I've killed 5 of your guys. You're broken in another model or so. Or you have a make a break test at least. You're not catching up. And I don't mean disrespect in the sense that like he's not a good player or something, or he couldn't figure it out or anything, or he doesn't have the skills. It's just, it's not possible. It's mathematically highly unlikely to be able to. And based on his current play, it made no sense that he was going to all of a sudden score all these victory points in one round of shooting on turn 3 with half his team. I mean, it was nuts. I'm just going to be real. Like, this guy drove me insane. I probably could have at least tried to compete with Elliot on best overall in that last pod if I could have just, had a sort of faster moving opponent. Like, it makes me want them to do chess clocks or something to kind of do this to keep these people honest. There you go. That's my rant. That's the only rant I have.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good. I'll be honest, I haven't been to many tournaments, but the ones I have been to, luckily I've never gone up against someone that argued something so finickety that it actually affected the outcome of the game. Like, but
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the other. There was one other, and this is the Tau hate. The orc player got super frustrated and charged me and my mom. And so he just hid under a building most of the game and tried to flame me. But he got a little salty. Just the Gene Stealer Colts guy, after that run of bad luck in the first turn and losing cut off ahead, which is 3 maxing out a primary in turn 1. He actually rage quit the whole tournament and just left. And
After your game or in the middle of it?
Actually, after turn 1. He went first in turn 1. He had initiative. I went second, which, as you know, is an advantage for a shooting army. If you get to go second, it's brilliant. It's fantastic. It really sets you up to do well. And he left a couple of his guys not, they weren't obscured in the open, including his leader who failed that charge. And he thought the leader had made the charge, and we had to have another discussion about that. And I offered to let him take the charge back. He said, it probably wouldn't have made a difference anyway. Went off. But yeah, he quit the whole tournament. The TO did talk to him, and he told me that he didn't say it was anything that I did. But yeah, he actually quit the entire pod.
So Tau are indeed the real hobby killers, in both 40k and Kill Team.
If you don't know how to play against them or you haven't seen them, I think players that do know or have an idea how to deal with them, they're not going to have those kinds of one-sided battles. But bad luck, good luck, it goes both ways. And Gene Stealers don't have disgusting resilience. They don't have something to fall back. You miss your armor save and you get one reroll, and then you got a bunch of guys, right? So you've got 8 guys that are getting shot at. You're out of rerolls pretty fast. And I got to hit it 6 out of 4 shots. So it happens sometimes. And it did in his case.
Well, ultimately, as much as we say that there is skill involved, it always does come down to luck. Statistical luck that you can hopefully manage, but you can't plan on always rolling 6s or always rolling 1s.
Exactly, and a lot of the top meta teams, they're able to ride those because everybody gets good and bad luck. So rationally, they're able to ride that luck in and out. Where I think some of the other armies, if they get a run of bad luck, it could cost them a placing in the.
Exactly, with Elliot's 15 Poxwalker list, if he rolled badly on 4, 5 models, he doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Who cares?
Yeah.
That was like 4 points, If you're playing Grey Knights and you roll badly on 5 models, you have lost 100% of your team.
Absolutely, and this is the thing with Kill Team. It's important in 40k, but you don't have this options, right, that you have in 40k. It's still important, but you're less able to sort of flex and adjust to that, especially with an elite army, like you said, right? If you're unlucky as a Space Marine, as a Grey Knight, as a Death Watch player, I did play a Death Watch player. He wasn't unlucky, but once again, if he had been unlucky, it's 1 out of 5 or 6 of his guys is just dead, right? He's lost 20% of his team.
Yes, much, much harder to come back from such a big loss, potentially. So, sticking with the Tau, you just said that you played a Deathwatch team, but what else did you play? You've mentioned Do you see the cults? Astra Militarum, Death Watch.
Yep. So yeah, Imperial, Death Watch, Necrons, Thousand Suns, Adeptus Astartes. In fact, when I played the Thousand Suns, all 3 of my games in that pod were versus Adeptus Astartes, which is a fairly good matchup for Thousand Suns. It's not perfect because they've got some nasty multi-damage weapons, but it's better than playing against the Poxwalker Horde if you're playing, Thousand Suns. And that's part of the thing. Part of the luck too is the draw of the tournament. I didn't expect to win with Thousand Suns. When you play a faction, I don't know if you do this, but I do. I think of all the ways I can beat them while playing them with other factions, and then when you can do that and it comes easy to you, you start to understand why they tend to be a mid-table faction in the meta or a lower than mid-table. If you can easily think of ways to kind of defeat them, then that's a bad sign, right? You're supposed to be a little stumped. That's supposed to be a hard problem, not an easy problem.
Don't have that issue when I play my Grey Knights. So.
Okay. Right?
Yeah.
So I played almost everybody. I didn't play Grey Knights. There were only a couple Grey Knight players. I didn't play Tyranids. I did play Death Guard. Gosh, I played against Tao in one game as well.
Playing against Tao as Tao?
Yeah, playing against Tao at one of my Tao games. He, however, was taking a turret and a stealth suit. And once I saw his list and the mission, I thought he'd have a difficult time being competitive. And I think probably a follow-up question might be like, well, what would you do against the list? This mission did have cut off the head as a mission objective, and so my only concern was that the turret hits my T3 toughness 3 recruit and just vaporizes him. But so I prioritized the turret so my crew could hide, and then I ignored his stealth suit and killed focused on his rail rifles. And that seemed to work out pretty good for me. It was easy to get close to his turret, and he wasn't, I will say, to be honest, he wasn't a competitive player. He was maybe like a mid-table player. He knew how to play his Tau, his list, but he didn't understand how to play against sort of a drone spammer or why that list would suffer against a list like mine. And so, in fairness, it probably wasn't a fair matchup. I don't think he had an optimized list in that case. But yeah, same thing you do against normal talent. You take out his invaders if you can. Maybe not always. If you were running drone spam, I'd probably have a different approach. But the stealth suit is such a huge point sink. It can only hold one objective. It's hitting on 5s usually with one shot. He had a fusion blaster with his stealth suit, so it's deadly if it hits. And I think he killed one drone, but that's fine. You can have my 7-point model with your 21-point model and stand on that objective. I just ignored him. You don't try and shoot a 2-wound model with a 3-up save and a -1 hit out in the open. When you can kill, you can kind of wreck the rest of his list without even touching that. But I did try to teach him a little bit. Like, it's something Chuck and I talked about, which is each time we came to a player that was newer or beginning, and a lot of our first matches tend to be newer players who probably weren't playing very competitively. We would try to kind of teach them and say, hey, this is what you want to do, or you might want to take a look at or consider doing this instead, or maybe that's not a great place to move, or hey, here on your list you took this, and this is what I'm taking, and what you need to look out for.
Were you saying that as they were making the mistake, or did you wait till they made the mistake, destroyed them, and they said, by the way, here's why you suck?
So in the first time I played Tau, I actually would tell them, it was more tactical stuff I would tell them. So I wouldn't say, oh, you want to make sure and shoot this guy, right? Because it's a tournament, I'm not probably going to tell them that. But I would tell them, say, these drones move this far, they can do this. You want to be sure that you put a guy here or do something there. So it wouldn't cost me. I'm giving them advice. It doesn't cost me the match directly, but I kind of feel like telling them right afterwards is, it gets kind of old and kind of gets to be a kind of, some people might see it as you talking down to them, kind of a dick move. So I try not to do that. If they ask later after the game, I'll definitely tell them, and like maybe set up a couple of pieces. The last pod where I was trying to win the most points, I didn't do any of that. Just to try and be competitive. I would tell them afterwards if they asked or if I thought it was a well-made point. But I only did it once or twice because I don't want to lecture them during the game. So once or twice, I might give them a pointer, but that was it. And not until I had done it, because once again, my goal was to score as many points as possible.
Okay, fair enough. Uh, Before we move on to your other teams, quickly sticking with Tau for a moment. Have you been playing Tau in Arena as well, or have you mainly been playing kind of on the Adepticon missions so that you were ready for those?
Yeah, so Chuck and I have been playing specifically the Adepticon missions. We have the arena set. We've got it all painted. I think we played 1 or 2 games, like a month ago or 2 months ago, whatnot. But we haven't actually done it in earnest. So I don't have any insight yet into Tau on Arena. There is an issue with drones not being able to open doors, in the sense that that's something you're going to have to plan for. Whether it's going to work to have a fire warrior do that or a recruit or something, I don't know yet. But it will be interesting to see if the flying makes a difference. That is something in Arena, being able to sort of fly over a crowded hallway to get to a backfield objective. Just me, back of the envelope theorizing. Maybe that can cause problems. Maybe it doesn't. It's hard to say.
I think flying is hugely useful for several reasons. Even if, like, on the most basic level, it means the cognitive burden for the player with the flying units is just lowered so much. You don't have to worry about who you're activating first. You're not going to block yourself up. So many of my practice games with my Grey Knights where I'm on 32 mils, even though I only have 5 models, I've
Mm-hmm.
got myself stuck indoors.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I have to waste an entire turn backing everybody up an inch so that somebody can get through. And just being able to just fly over it, really good. I think also it allows you to get around one of the most common tactics in Arena, which is using a single dirt cheap model like a Hormigaunt or a Poxwalker to just block a corridor, which is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care, you just fly over it.
Yeah, so I'll be eager to play. I think Chuck and I are going to take some time off, and then we'll get our game night to start looking at Arena, because we both plan on probably attending Nova. So we need
When
to.
is Nova?
It's August. I think it's the weekend of August 29th and 30th. So I think it runs earlier than that. I think they start Thursday and Friday with the Kill Team Pod play, and then the GT, or the Grand Tournament, starts on Saturday, goes through Sunday, and then there's some other non-Kill Team things Monday and Tuesday. But it's pretty big event. But yeah, just the end of August, just in the first day of September there, and that's in Washington D.C.
Okay, cool. And final note before we move on to the Tau. So I don't know if you know, but I'm going to Warhammer World this weekend.
Awesome.
I'm taking Grey Knights.
Okay.
How do I beat Tau?
Are you doing? Is this Arena, or is it? I haven't looked at the mission pass.
This is just straight Arena out of the book. Yeah.
So in Arena, you have to take my advice with a grain of salt, because in Arena it may be different. There are probably other tactics that are better suited to beating Tau. I think the focus tends to be more on positional placement and movement of your models, and a lot less about killing things or countering things. I can't fly over the whole board now because of the hall. I'm restricted by hallways and things like that, so that's a big difference. But I'll just kind of shift it to regular kill team. How I would beat Tau is, if you have good shooting, if you're, say, the Eldar, let's see, Grey Knights, you've got the Silencer. You've got a good flamer. You've got, of course, you've got the rapid fire bolt guns on the arms, right? What are they called again? Something bolt
Storm
guns.
bolters. Rapid
Storm bolters.
fire
That's
too.
yeah. So you've got the storm bolters in the arm. You probably will have difficulty getting to big guns if he even brings any big guns. So if you have to kill drones, gosh, all your stuff is AP 0 though, right?
The basic storm bolters are AP 0. Everything else, I think, or at least the Psy Cannon and the Incinerator are both AP -1. Um, oh, really, Grey Knights are a close combat army because all of their close combat weapons are at least AP -1, if not AP -2, but they're all
Okay.
D3, apart from the hammer, which is just 3.
Arena should play to some of your strengths at least. Your biggest problem will be covering. Your problem is not going to be the Tau. It's going to be covering objectives and with 5 models. I guess it's actually not going to be. Normally, if you were playing in an open area, I would say, and you had good high volume of shooting, I would shoot all the drones and and then try to shake or break the rest of the actual team. The problem with that is you've got these rail rifles removing models in turn. So you need to be able to find a way to hide from them or make it difficult for them. And on an open field, you can't easily do that with all the buffs from comms and the recon drone. That sniper is going to be hitting on 2s, probably wounding on 2s with 2 shots each turn on most boards. And arena is going to be no different if he gets in like a hallway. The difference is he probably won't have a castle in an arena. So the advantage is he may or may not be close enough to pass off wounds to a drone. If he does have a castle and you can assault it with a flamer, that's a chance. The problem is, let's say you move into range and you have initiative. If he's a smart player, he has the command points, he'll do decisive shot to kill your flamer. But if you go second, or if you go first and you're able to get initiative and shoot, and the problem is he'll also ready against your. It's going to be hard. This is the same problem everybody else has. Go after the rifles if you can, because you're not going to be able to block the drones from getting position because they can fly. And this is having not played more than one game of Arena. Play with Tao. I played with Drukhari, so this is just me theorizing. But you're going to have to find a way to block doors to keep the drones out. They can't fly through doors. I think the flamers can be effective in arena because they're close quarters. And charge things and tie them up. Use multi-charging, use consolidating, use pile-in to try and snag as many models into combat with height as you can, because the drones are they're not good at close combat. So if you tie 3 of them up, you don't have too much to worry about other than a lucky roll, which you can't do anything against. I have killed things in close combat with drones. It's a lucky roll, and you just gotta take that hit. So yeah, I would guard your objectives fast, guard them, try and pull as many things into close combat with the Grey Knights as you can, and see if you can find a way to optimize use of that flamer. I still think this is a little bit of masochism. you can give it a shot. I mean, if I think of a player like Elliot or Chuck or George competitively playing an arena versus Grey Knights, I think you have a steep hill to climb. But good luck. You might do it. You never know.
Maybe I'm playing with loaded dice.
It's weird because I like the Grey Knights faction. It was the first I played Shadow Wars Armageddon back when it was out, and Grey Knights. It's kind of the prelude to Kill Team, really. I think, ignoring the earlier iteration of Kill Team. And I played Grey Knights, and they were fantastic in Shadow Wars. And I still have those models, but it was very clear early on in Arena. Although I enjoyed playing them, anybody who was competitive would just curb stomp me in the games, and it got old fast. But good for you, persevering, pushing through.
Well, no, actually, it's all a smokescreen because, right, if I were to take a top tier list, something that actually can possibly field enough models
Hmm.
to actually be competitive. If I took Elliot's list of 15 Poxwalkers, 3 Plague Marines, I would be expected to win. And if I didn't win, everybody would look at me and say, he is a bad player. This way, if I take Grey Knights and I lose, everybody will say, Grey Knights suck.
Right.
If I come middle of the pack, they're going to say, oh wow, he's a pretty good player actually. That's not bad. So
And you're not wrong. You win a pot. People want to know what your secret, like I won the pot with thousands on secret sauce was, and I just want to tell them I didn't run into Tyranid spam or Poxwalker spam. That's what my secret sauce is, and it's all elite armies, which it could happen if you got paired up against a bunch of elite armies. You should actually do well. You could potentially do very well against those armies. So it's reasonable. There's a chance you might do fine with what you have. Although they don't do pods, right? Warhammer World's actually like a GT. It's a grand tournament.
yeah, it's going to be a full. I assume it's 64 man, but it might be 128. I'm not sure.
Wow, awesome,
Like
120.
tournament, Swiss. I assume Swiss pairings. So my first game will probably define the rest of the tournament for me. For example, if I go up against Deathwatch, well, actually, that's fine for me. And I might even, not just win, but actually do very well on objectives as well. Depends how my Cybolt rolling goes. Um, but yeah,
Yes, yeah.
if I go against Tyranid spam, I'm not going to get a single victory point, and I may as well just quit at that point. Rage quit like the Orc player did.
Yes, yeah. Um, yeah, it's gonna be tough, but I agree with you. I think you're kind of set you up for your final placing for sure. I mean, and depending upon how good those players are, you do have casual players at Warhammer World. At least the accounts I read of Annihilation 2018 there, it seemed like there were quite a few casual players as well. So if you do get those casual players, even within his list, maybe he's going to decide to bring 4 warriors, right? Not that that's great against you, but you can. They're nasty if they get the jump on you, but if you get the jump on them, you have a reasonable chance of killing them. So it could happen. You never know. And this is Chuck's rationale why he doesn't play a top tier army. Both of us were kind of thought, it would be a more significant achievement, a little bit more of a challenge to see if we could win with sort of a mid tier. And I don't want to get into technicals whether they're second, third, or fourth tier, whatever, but non top tier kind of factions, which is why I played Drukhari and why I liked when I played Chuck, I tend to play Drukhari or Thousand Suns, even though I can play Tau. I kind of do that to sort of do something a little different and give myself a bit of a challenge with those factions lists. But if I'm in a tournament and I want to win, it's hard to argue with the rationale of taking the best army you can, which is why I expect to see a lot of Death Guard and a lot of Tyranids at the Warhammer. Because Death Guard are good with any map, almost any meta. They have great shooting, inexpensive models for what they provide, and excellent board control and cheap chaff. And Tyranid are, I don't think they're shooting. The balance isn't quite as good with Death Guard, and their plebeians are not quite as they're not quite as durable. But they have close to the same thing. I mean, I don't know. Did you look at the results from Warhammer World from Annihilation 2018 Kill Team?
Yes, but I can't remember them off the top of my head.
Tyranids and Harlequins, yeah, it was pretty. But they used that very sparse terrain layout, right? That was the thing. They didn't have any line of sight blocking, and it made sense why those lists did well. But I think Harlequins just because no one had played Harlequins. At this tournament and even LVO, you didn't see Harlequins do very well at all. George Rollins played Harlequins once and got shredded by a shooty army. But Tyranids have been top meta along with Death Guard quite a while. And I don't I still think they have a pretty good chance of winning these things. I didn't see a competitive Tyranid player I should make this point. I didn't see a competitive Tyranid player play at Adepticon. There were Tyranid players there, but they were not playing, as far as I could tell, competitive lists or the games that I watched. They didn't look like they were tactically playing competitively either. So the jury's out on whether, had Miguel or someone like that showed up at Adepticon, how well they would have done. I don't quite know whether the train would have been a problem for them or not, or because the Poxwalkers did just fine. So I imagine the Tyranid God spam would do well also. And there's lots of line of sight, so that warrior could hide easily.
Yep, no, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. I think I said it in my roundup of that very short interview I did with Elliot on Sunday, that the fact that there weren't as many Tyranid players as everybody on the internet feared isn't necessarily indicative that Tyranids are no longer scary and very, very good. But well, I suppose at the very least, it is a reassurance that Tyranids are not going to be the only thing you see. Definitely.
Yeah, I still think they're a fantastic faction to take. I still think they can possibly even counter some of the Poxwalker stuff. The problem is they have a narrower tactical window where they can't make as many mistakes, and they have to maybe need a little bit of luck. But I think there are ways to beat some of the other lists with the Tyranids. And I also don't think that there are strategies that are 100% effective against them. So some of the insight or input has been, or feedback has been that, well, now that Tyranids have been played so much, people know how to counter them and they're expecting it. And I didn't see that at all at the tournament. I don't think you can obviously optimize your list, but you can't 100% in a dice rolling game figure out, oh, this is my 100% counter to Tyranids. So I think they're still very much part of the meta. I think whether they're top tier statistically or not, I don't know, but they can definitely still win things.
Well, I think it was really proven in the final round against Michael that, I mean, everybody thinks of the Tyranid list that Miguel ran, and you think, oh, well, you just kill the warrior and they fall apart. Well, Michael, who everybody that plays him says is a great player, managed to kill the warrior turn one.
Turn one.
Still lost.
And I think he advanced his warrior, and I was surprised he didn't re-roll the advance to get him all the way behind. I think his tail was sticky. I can't, and forgive me, I hope I'm not wrong in this. But he gave Michael that window by not advance, because I think it's a movement phase, so he must have had command point. I think he had command point. So Michael must have gone after him to shoot his Tyranid who was poking out, or having stood still behind cover and taken lurk or something. But I don't remember if he did those things. And the list now, I think the meta is shifting a little bit, and I'm wondering if either a 2 warrior list or warrior plus lictor list might even be more effective than the single warrior list. But yeah, Michael was able to take out and good for him, warrior first turn. He played excellently and still could not break the Tyranids. So yeah, I think a lot of that rumor mill stuff about them being easily countered or past meta, or don't bring them to a tournament, I think that's just rubbish. I think you should bring them if you're a good player and you know how to play them, because I think we've not seen the last of Tyranids in the winner's circle.
Oh, no chance. I think, as you said, me and Beerenid and others, obviously, it's not like we're in a vacuum, have chatted, and yeah, don't get me wrong, the 19 Hormigants, and one warrior is a good list,
Yeah.
but at some point you just have too many models. You don't need that many. If you're thinking about capturing objectives, maximum you're going to have 6 on the board. So why do you have an extra 13 models on the board, effectively? And so if you drop a few of them for another warrior, you're kind of, firstly, warriors are very killy and durable. They're good good units on their own in their own right. But also they are putting in redundancy to stop you from your one potentially fatal flaw of leadership. Yeah. Anyway,
agree with you. And I think it'll be interesting with elites because I think they actually make those factions stronger. So they're going to make the chaff factions, or the factions that have chaff available, stronger because now they can roll those points into a better unit. We're limited on the number of things that we can take. So Drukhari, for example, I can only take one dark lance, one heavy weapon, one special weapon, only 3 witch fighters, and the witches are paper thin. So if I can roll 3 or 4 of those up and take an elite model, just like the Tyranid would do with his Hormagaunts or Termagants, then now all of a sudden you've got a much stronger force a potentially much stronger force in Arena with that elite model. Whereas, Death Watch taking an elite was like, hey, look, they get another guy, right? They're not. It still helps them. I would argue that I'm curious to see how this turns out. This could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that it probably is going to make those chaff teams actually quite a bit more difficult to defeat in Arena than it will do. It'll do more for them, I think, than it does for teams. And I think the elite teams will probably, at least if I were playing Thousand Suns and they said, hey, you can take this Scarab Occult Terminator, that Terminator is barely better than my Rubric Marines. It's probably going to cost more. I might as well just take an extra Rubric Marine and another Zangor or something, or, however the points work out. I'm not sure there's going to be a benefit to taking that elite to outweigh having more body forward.
imagine how Grey Knights feel.
It depends who they give you. But yeah, I would expect you to get a Paladin, which really doesn't do a whole lot for you.
Nothing at all.
Same thing as the Scarab Occult guy who I started, just painting this guy up early on when I heard Elites was coming out. And then I looked at his data sheet in regular 40K because I don't play Thousand Suns 40K. And I thought, well, great. So what? So he's got a better base save, but everybody's got AP weapons. Big deal. And yeah, and he's got a little bit stronger or more AP on his weapon. That's it. It's by one more point. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to take him unless you're going for fluff, or if they raise the points to 125, or I don't know what they're doing. But if they did that, then maybe you could make a case to add a marginally better model, just to get another, big shooter or something onto the board. But yeah, I tend to think it'd be more like you think. I think the Dark Eldar will probably do better with elites than Thousand Suns will, or some of these other armies.
Yes, of course, because the Dark Eldar. I don't really want to get sidetracked to this, but we've seen is it abominations, grotesques,
Yes, yes,
and mandrakes, right?
right.
I'm excited for mandrakes. I think they're really cool units. So, yeah.
I wonder. I wish we knew more about actually which ones they were bringing to Kill Team. It'd be interesting to see which ones AdMech get, because they've got they're another faction with a whole bunch of other models that are not in Kill Team. But I still think I agree with. I'm trying to think who said this. I don't know if it was Michael or Chris, but made a point that I think AdMech can be more competitive than they're placing in tournaments. I don't think they've been piloted as well as possible yet. And so I have AdMech painted models from, once again, Shadow Wars, Armageddon, and I've been side eyeing them and thinking, how effective can I be with those guys? The problem is, to buff them up, they kind of end up being elite, right? They kind of end up being like an elite group, and then you kind of lose the benefit of being AdMech.
I think AdMech have a great tool set to pull from, and they have answers for almost everything that could possibly be thrown at them, at least in their weapon selection. And frankly, they can plasma spam better than Guard. I mean, okay, they can't take as many as Guard, but I'd rather have their better BS.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think I played against Chuck and just rolled over his Necrons with the Plasma Spam Admech. And I didn't even play a full Plasma Spam list. I only played, I think, 3 Plasma, because I wanted the 2 close combat guys. But yeah, with the first 2 turns, I mean, that's the thing, is they can be a monster the first 2 turns. Shroud Solemn, especially against shooting armies. The Necron, to be fair, is a shooting army, so it's really not a good matchup for them. They only have single damage weapons, so you go make sure everybody's obscured. You get turn 2. I got turn 2 with Shroud Solemn, with plasmas, and a couple of turn 1 charges on a short board, and you'll be short range for your plasma. You'll charge with your Princeps, and he's not going to be able to hit you, and you should be dropping enemy units quite easily. In that second turn, you take that +1, and if you're lucky enough not to lose the initiative battle, you're going to put another round of hurt on the enemy. So I think I agree with you that they're potentially deadly.
Okay, now we have to talk about Drukhari, because it seems that a lot of people like Drukhari, but they rarely see them represented on the table, at least in the tournament scene. And then we have to talk about Thousand Suns, because you played them, but also because I was talking again with Biranid on the side in the chat in my Discord, and we're both pretty convinced that Thousand Suns should be top tier. So let's get back to that in a mo. Tell us about Drukhari. You've played them in a tournament twice now. You didn't win, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad team.
Yeah.
But
So
are they?
yeah, you should consider who I'm losing to. I'm losing to Chuck, right? Who did extremely well with his Necron. So I lost to him at Adepticon, and then I lost to Michael, who was the second place finisher at LVO. So I'm not losing to middle tier players. I'm losing to very good competitive players. So it's not one of those things where you can say it's the army. Like, you can see mediocre players win with Death Guard. I don't think you see those mediocre players winning with mid-table teams, whether they be Necrons or Drukhari. So part of it is the army, in a sense, not all of it. I don't think I'm as good of a player as some of the other competitive players yet. That being said, if you talk to LA, he'd say, the witches don't bring enough to the table. So let's talk about Drukhari. So the question, the question that begs to be asked is, why aren't Drukhari? And your other thing, why aren't Thousand Suns? Well, we can get to that later. The reason why is because once again the Dark Eldar are swinging. You have no control over combat drugs. For example, the mech, they at least get to choose. They can't re-choose one, but I don't get to choose my combat drugs, right? Now, granted, the combat drugs are for the whole game, so maybe that's overpowered or whatnot. But it's random, right? So there's that, okay? They're random. The other thing is the damage from the Darklight weapons is also random, right? It's D6, and that sounds huge, right? You're like, D6, that's 6 potentially, but you can very easily, and it's happened, you can roll a 1. The Dark Lance is also only 1 shot, ever. It's not like Plasma Spam where you get 2 shots rapid fire. So you missed that shot, you've just lost your best shooting for the whole round. And that happened to Michael. When I played Michael, I rolled like 2 1s or something. I forgot the rolling, but he and I were going back and forth between his heavy weapon platform and my Dark Lance. And so you need that lance to hit to take out multi-damage enemy shooting. That being said, you're also an assault army. So while, say, Elliot and the Poxwalkers just need to sit on an objective and, moan, mill about, right? You actually have to, you don't have a good save out in the open, right? So you have no save, like essentially a 6-up save, right? For which is, you have a feel no pain, but 6-up feel no pain is nothing to sort of base your strategy on. So you need to be in close combat as a witch. And that first turn is basically how many witches can your opponent kill before they get into close combat. And you have a lot of tough choices about attempting 10-inch turn 1 charges, things like that. It's even worse if you end up gaining initiative in the first round, because no matter where you hide your witches, your enemy is going to be able to flank you and shoot them. And so you have essentially, you're about as half as good as a Poxwalker discussing resilience, right? You've got a 6 up, he's got a 5 or 6. So you're half as durable, right? And if you get into close combat, you can be decent, but a baseline witch is actually not that effective in close combat. It's strength 3, so you're wounding most anything that's T4 on 5s or above, right? Strength 3, unless you get the combat drug to boost your strength. You do have multiple attacks, but you're hitting on 3s, which is good. You barely wound with your multiple attacks, and even if you obviously wound multiple times, it's still 1 injury roll. So they're swingy. I mean, sometimes you can roll through an army, and this is why people do this. Is they don't understand. Is you see them just run through someone like a Harlequin list, so to speak. And the Darklance hits, the Blaster hits. Maybe the Hackatrix is able to, fade and fire with her blast pistol, and you start removing Deathwatch flails and things off the game board. But that doesn't always happen. Things fail, you miss charges, your Darklight weapons don't hit, and you just start losing. It's just you need to hold an objective, but you have to be in close combat with a witch to be durable. The Cabalite warriors are terrible shooters, because they're rapid fire, they hit on 3s. That sounds good, but they're only wounding on 4s. Good against Death Guard, right? It's great to have poison weapons against Death Guard, but against T3 armies like that.
Sense thematically, just to quickly get that out there. Carry on.
Poison Guard, yes, yeah. But against Eldar or you could be wounding on 3s, right? For things. So I can't say that I found the perfect way to play them against, some of these other lists. 3 over, I missed 2 or 3 charges. My memory is terrible. I wish I had it filmed. I forgot to charge a model near 2 of his models. Just forgot to. I don't. But to be fair, I don't. I think he still would have won. So I don't want to say that this was the linchpin of the game. But that's the disadvantage of playing 3 different factions. Is I consider myself very good at Tau, but I knew them from 40k. The other 2 I need to play more to be better at. I would say I'm probably, Drukhari and Thousand Suns are my second best faction. But I think Arena is a great opportunity because it actually plays against the Witch's biggest weakness, which is getting shot out in the open. Now I've got all these walls. I'm fast. I've got 28mm bases. There's a lot you can do. You can put a couple of those, mediocre shooters behind a rushing line of witches down a hallway. There's definitely some, and I've got lots of bodies and I'm fast, right? So Drukhari can move 8 inches for their witches, 7 for the Cabalites. They can move quite quickly across the board. So I expect them to be decent, and so I'm looking forward to playing them in Arena. And probably spending a little more time with the Drukhari and trying to play them in the Arena kind of tournament and see how they do. I wish I could play multiple factions up at Nova, but I'll have to pick one. I don't know what I'll pick yet, but if I think I'm competent enough, I think I'll try to play Drukhari.
Okay. Just a very quick note on the Drukhari there. Is your typical list 11 models? 12?
Yeah, 11 or 12. You're about right, yeah, without having it in front of me. It tends to be... The great thing about the Drukhari is you don't have a lot of hard decisions in your list. Thousand Suns, I think you have some hard decisions. And I think that's why you don't see Thousand Suns top tier, is because depending upon the mission and the opponent, some of the choices are unclear. Because a lot of it depends on how they play against you. There's no way to predict that unless you've seen them play. So standard list for those that don't know it, is usually a heavy weapon. Usually against more elite armies, you tend to take a Darklance, and then a Blaster. And those are the one-shot D6 damage. On more horde like armies where you need more volume of fire, you tend to take a splinter cannon and a shredder. They give you a little bit greater volume of fire. They're not quite as strong or do as much damage, but your object in that case is to put as many wounds on the enemy as possible. For example, the Tyranids. Once you have to kill the problem with Tyranids, they're an exception because you need to kill the warrior. So, but the Dark Lance doesn't do. You might think, oh, Dark Lance sounds great, but it's only doing one, even though it's D6. Excuse me, it's doing D6 your D6 damage rolls, right? So even in that case, you'd rather do 4 wounds with a splinter cannon with 6 shots, right, and potentially kill him instead. So yeah, you've got So the typical list is heavy weapon and special weapon. Basically, depending upon the toughness of the models you're playing against, whether it's elite or a horde. Once you have those two, you always take a Hecatrix usually. It's got 3 attacks. She's got some special weapons. Depending on who I'm playing, it's most likely will be an Agonizer T4. If you're playing less than that, the Power Sword will give you a better outcome against T3 models. The Blaster is plus or minus depending on a couple of factors. Then you'll take 3 Witch Fighters always, because you're your best close combat guy. The Hydra Gauntlets outperform the Shardnet despite the 2 damage. People say, I love having that 2 damage, but if you do the math, they tend to outperform the Shardnet and Impaler against T4 and above models. And they're even close on T3. About a T3, I'll take the Shardnet. T4 above, I'll typically take Hydra Gauntlets. And then the rest is usually filled out with Witches. I'll take 1 Cabalite Warrior for comms to make sure my Dark Lance hits. I've started toying with taking 3 Cabalites and getting rid of some of my sort of basic plebeian witches to see how that works against armies that are a little more shooty or tough. Because the witches aren't going to do a lot against a Death Guard or a Marine even with wounding on 5s with 2 or 3 attacks. So. And I've only tried it a little bit. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but that's another option. And I think in Arena where you have crowded hallways, having a little extra shooting is probably a good way to go.
Okay. And I suppose a very quick question about the Drukhari. Why do you play them?
Honestly, most of the factions I play, I just like them. I like
aesthetic,
themes, aesthetics. Thousand Suns. It has to do with I read the Horus Heresy books. I've read quite a few of them. I like the Thousand Suns. They're an interestingly tragic story, but the models are beautiful. I think the models are fantastic sculpts. So I think aesthetically and then also from the fluff, that's why I picked Thousand Suns. For Drukhari, it's more the aesthetics. Just the idea of like an assaulting army was really interesting to me, and I kind of I liked like the models and the colors and all that stuff was important to me. Tau was mostly I picked them first because I thought I could paint them quickly. They were the first faction I ever played in Shadow War Armageddon, and I just thought I can paint these guys fast. They looked absolutely terrible because white is difficult. And then Drukhari was second, and Thousand Suns was my more latest kind of iteration. But yeah, mine was purely for aesthetics, and then I didn't get into the fluff later. So the first 2, Tau, easy to paint. Drukhari, I think I liked the aesthetic. Whatever fluff was in the book, the codex that I read, and a lot of artwork I found really interesting to play this sort of ultra evil kind of race. And yeah, Thousand Suns, just fluff and aesthetics. And that's it. I've never actually said, hey, this is a top tier army, I want to play it. Like because I never played in a tournament, but it does change your perspective. You start to consider, oh, maybe I should paint some Death Guard, right? Maybe I should pull out this other group that I have.
Are you actually thinking about that?
I don't have any painted Death Guard. I have none in progress. I do have a box of Plague Marines that I bought a while ago. It's been sitting in my hobby pile of shame of plastic that needs to be painted. I've considered it. I haven't taken the plunge, obviously, or else I'd be painting them. I think I'm probably going to give the armies that I have a shot. I think that with Zangors, the Thousand Suns can be more successful in arena than they are in open play. Zangors tend to die in under fire. Michael had the same thing when he play tested them. They look good on paper. 5-up invuln should be like a 5-up feel no pain or whatever. Although feel no pain is better because it's per, or well, better or worse depending on the opponent. But playing against Necrons, like just shoots, they just get shot off the board with good shooting. So, but in arena, I've got all these walls, so not everybody can shoot them. So I think they're a little better positioned, and the flamers are pretty nice for the Thousand Suns. So that and psychic powers down a hallway sound fantastic. To your point with Grey Knights. So
Yes. Sorry, when I said that Thousand Suns should be top tier, I specifically meant in arena, because obviously that changes just how damn effective Zangors can be hugely. Because you're exactly right. I think the most you can run in is I want to say an 11-man team, but it might be a 10 or a 9, and
you can of just Zangers or the whole team.
the whole team,
You can get more than that.
Okay.
You can get full Zanger list. I want to say it's 12 or 13 models.
Sounds right. Yeah.
You get. It was one of my potential risks for Adepticon. It was on my roster. I just never played it. But yeah, you can do it. And if you can get the synergy with the medic and the Greyhorn and all that, it can be quite a force.
Yes. Yes. For anyone that isn't aware, they're all 2 attacks with an AP -1 weapon. Um, we're not even going to talk about their pistols. What's the point? You're not going
Don't
to give them them.
not going to take them, so don't talk about.
Yeah. Their 6-inch move, T4 with a 5-up invuln, like this kind of base. And strength 4.
Yeah, strength 4, toughness 4. Yeah, got it.
And then of course on top of that, I think taking a sorcerer, a combat sorcerer.
Yes, yeah, it's a strength +2, so strength 6, weapon 2 attacks, D3 damage. That was the shame about the sorcerer in open play kind of kill team is, unfortunately, he's just a space marine. So he doesn't get the all his dust rule. He doesn't get that immovable automaton or whatever, where he can be resurrected, or a injury, an out of action will turn into a flesh wound. So he's not durable, which is frustrating because you see these lists online in Reddit or whatnot. They'll say, "Oh, I play mine as a combat specialist," but I will tell you, you do that against a competitive player. You can ask George Rollins, like they'll just focus fire and kill. That'll be the first target they kill because he's actually not that hard to kill. But now you're in an arena and you've got not everybody. You can't focus fire him as easily. So I think, and his best value is in close combat. There's a couple other things too. So you've got the psychic power. You've got his multi-damage attacks. And if you made him a combat specialist, that's 3 attacks, which is much more effective. But you also have the tactic malicious familiar, which for 1 command point, at the end of the movement phase, I believe, you can, on a 4-up, you can cause a mortal wound to a model within 1 inch. So if you can imagine the sorcerer charging 3 models, he has a pretty good chance of killing every single one of those models. At least about a 50-50 chance in most cases of killing each one of those models on his turn, assuming he has the command points for malicious familiar. And I think so it'll be interesting to see in arena, and I don't know offhand. I did play 1 game with them. I won the game, but I was still pretty new, so I'm not certain how I'm going to play them in arena. And I'm wondering if I should just pick 1 faction instead of trying to play 3.
Well, if you're thinking of focusing on arena, I honestly think that Thousand Suns are genuinely top tier. I mean, certainly, if you think about elites, I look at the combat sorcerer with my Grey Knights and think, I don't want to go anywhere near that. And these are elites, you know, like that combat sorcerer is really, really good.
I'm hoping they let us take the Terminator Sorcerer as an elite. It's this guy. They haven't announced it as an elite. I know they have the scare of the cult, but there actually is a Sorcerer and Terminator armor that's an elite choice for Thousand Suns and 40k, and that would be fantastic. It'd be a second set of psychic attacks, not obviously per turn, but that you could use. But now he's got Terminator armor, so now he's a 2-up save instead of he's an automatic 2-up regardless of how much damage your weapon does or anything else, which gives him that little bit of durability. Plus I don't know if they're going to do the psychics, keep it a cyborg or whatever, but a little better weapon, more durability. So it'd be interesting to see if they did that. That might be a compelling choice. 1,000 instead of taking another rubric. I'd love to take a Terminator Sorcerer.
That would be cool. And so you did actually play with your Thousand Suns at Adepticon.
Yep, yeah, I won my pod with them. Yeah.
Speaks for itself, obviously. What list were you running? What did you go up against? How was it?
So yeah, probably not the best test case, but I went up against, this is the one I mentioned, I got up against 3 Adeptus Astartes groups, one after the other, and each player was significantly better than the other one. I mean, it worked out as you would hope in a tournament. The first player was newer, like he knew how to play his guys, but I don't think he knew how to play Thousand Suns against Thousand Suns. And I think I got quite a few points in that game. But each one of these opponents, against each one, I took a very similar list, just an elite list. So I didn't take a whole ton of Zangers because I knew that most of their weapons were single damage. So I didn't want to worry about the durability. And I think, I'm trying to remember how many boards were long or short. If it's a long board, also getting the Zangers into combat takes longer than a short board. They don't move as fast as drones or witches do, so it's a little bit tougher. So I took more shooty lists. I would take, I think one I took the Sparring Sorcerer, of course, the Soul Reaper Cannon. One I took, there's one with, now I have to remember. So usually it was those 3, or I would sub out the Warp Flamer for an Inferno Bolt gun, and then I would fill the rest with Zangers, including a Brayhorn. But I never ran
a Soul Reaper cannon.
I do take a Soul Reaper. Yeah, every list. Yeah, the Soul Reaper, especially against elite armies that are T4, is almost a must-take with demo because it's a reliable way to remove models. The downside is it would be nice to spread those 4 shots out, but because you're playing against an elite army, a lot of their guys based out. If they're a good player, they will intentionally make them more than 2 inches apart. So you're always firing 4 shots into one model, which is not the most efficient use of a demo Soul Reaper cannon. But it's effective and it's really good at killing things. So I generally take it. You might swap the demo onto a board. Yeah, that was my list. It's not. I mean, the Zangers are all vanilla. They're kind of the same. I would usually take Soul Reaper as demo, Sparring Sorcerer as the leader because I don't really want him close into combat until maybe later turns in the game. And then I would take Calm, Zangor with a Brayhorn, and then usually like a combat Zangor. So that was my standard list. I don't think I changed. I only swapped out the Flamer at some point to just mess around with icons of flame and things like that. But tactically, I didn't really change anything for this list, and it was very effective in killing all of those factions. And the only game that was close was the last game, and that's only because and this is smart of him, but this is why playing Thousand Suns can be not so fun sometimes, is a lot of armies will sit back, right? So you're playing Zangers, they'll sit back. Space Marines with their missile launchers and their grenade launchers, what's their other that tactic, the heavy bolter tactic with the Hellfire round. They'll just sit back and try and shoot you. which is smart on their point. They're trying to use their multi-damage weapons, right? So this player he was actually a good player, very cagey, very tight player, meaning that he's measuring everything, hiding everybody. He mostly ran away from me the whole game. But to where I couldn't, he would run from my flamer and just like move his guys, out of the way of the 8-inch thing, and he would hide everybody. He would actually advance guys with weapons that were not assault and just give up shooting to avoid my shooting or my guys. But it was fairly effective. Like he only lost by 2 or 3 points. But the thing is, I wonder if you've had this sort of same realization. Generally in Kill Team tends to reward aggressive play. It does not reward, I would say, the majority of time, it does not reward timid play. Sitting back and doing nothing is an easy way to lose games. Even if your guys are safe, you'll lose board control, you'll lose something else. Because if you can't shoot and you're hiding behind line of sight terrain, can't see anybody, you're losing an opportunity. I mean, there's a model that essentially doesn't exist. So other than like the aspiring sorcerer or leader or something, I think he didn't take enough risks. And had he taken more risks, he might have done better against my fact.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But I think that's very much by design, purely because of objectives. You have to be on objectives, and that almost always means you have to move towards the enemy. Well, thank you very much, Erik. It's been really great to talk to you about Tau, about Drukhari, and about Thousand Suns. Um, is there any goodbye message you want to give to the viewers?
No, I just say if I were to give any advice, I'd say try to pick a faction that's somewhat competitive if you want to play in a tournament. And if they're not, if they're mid-table, that's okay. But just play with just that faction and try to challenge yourself against other factions, either your local game store or friends. I don't put a lot of value watching bat reps online. I think you don't learn as much. And if you can't do that, you're stuck with what Michael does, or maybe you do, where you try to proxy models and play against yourself a little bit, at least to try things out. And I think most of the top players, they're all doing that or they've done that. And I think if you really want to win a tournament, that's kind of what you're going to have to do. I can't think of any of the top competitive players that either aren't or haven't done that. Michael said he did. I know Miguel plays in his garage a bunch. Chuck and I play. Everyone. George Rollins has got that great Warp Charge Gaming channel. I'll plug his channel. They have good material, and those guys, he's always playing Kill Team. So yeah, like anything else, you got to do it a bunch. But I would say, counter to what I'm doing with like trying to play 3 different groups, it's actually probably better to just pick one, like Michael or Chuck, or even Elliot, and play that one group to the T. And I think that might make you maybe 5% better, or a little bit 10% better than someone who has to divide their time up. So that's my advice. And obviously play something you like. There are enough factions that are semi-competitive that I think you can place in the top 4 with anything. You may not win, you might not do it consistently, but most of the mid, not anything. Not Kroot. The Kroot are terrible, but anything. Most of the mid to top tier factions, I think, are capable of that. I think Admech are. I think Imperial Guard are. I think Thousand Suns are. Drukhari are. I think a well-played Space Marine team is probably capable. I think Orcs could probably do. Orcs have done it in past tournaments. They could do it. So that should tell us that the players make a difference for top 4. Top 1 or 2, I'd say it's tougher. I know Michael placed second, but I think, I think in a bigger tournament, it might be tougher with Eldar. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. For me, the jury's still out on whether there is top tier as like a Death Guard team or a Tyranids team. I'm not convinced actually. But hey, he's there to prove me wrong. He's doing well. Do you know if he's going to Nova or not?
I know that he wants to, but
Okay.
he hasn't confirmed.
I think Nova is going to answer a lot of questions. The game has been out for a while, unlike Last Nova, where it was fairly new. There's been some new factions introduced, and we'll see if they allow the Servants of the Abyss to play, because that's going to be the dark horse of the tournament. If they allow that group, I don't know if you know this, but they didn't allow it in Adepticon because the rules are technically beta rules.
You're correct. However, somebody just posted up their list and they had UR025 in their list.
Oh, but he has the keyword for AdMech. So Servants of the Abyss, only the...
So that side of the Blackstone Fortress weren't beta rules?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So So some of the models in Blackstone Fortress can be taken as non-commanders with existing. So the flamethrower woman can be taken with Imperial Guard, priest with Imperial Guard, 25 can be taken with AdMech. But the Chaos models are actually their own separate faction and kill team. Servants of the Abyss with the Chaos Space Marines and the Beastmen and the Negavolt Cultists and the Rogue Psychers. They're their own kill team faction. That specific kill team was not permitted at Adepticon because the rules are still technically beta rules.
Yes, so my mistake was I thought that the entire station here were all beta rules, but okay, no, I understand.
That'll be a dark horse because some of the models are pretty nasty, some nasty combinations, and if usually Games Workshop, when they run their own tournaments, they allow their beta rules. I'm expecting this Warhammer World. Actually, your tournament will be a good place, and heaven help you if you face them. That'll be the first chance we'll get to see them. And if I were going to Warhammer World, I would bring that faction.
Elliot is bringing that faction.
Yeah, he told me he's got a crazy schedule, man. That guy. So he's gonna do I think he'll do quite well because they're powerful, they're unexpected, and people don't know how to play against them. And that's a nasty combination. How to win a tournament. I'll be interested to see how Elliot does.
Yes, no, I agree completely. I think he's going to do very, very well in Arena with. Yeah, so just to double down on what you said there, play what you want to play, and then set your expectations accordingly. If you want to be the best, you're going to have to really work hard. However, I would probably recommend be the best of that team. I think that is a better goal.
If you like one of the top tier ones, go for it. But I wouldn't, and consider for sure. I'm not saying don't play them, but you just play what you enjoy in a sense, and you're going to get a lot of love being the top, Chaos Space Marine player placing fourth, just as much as the top Death Guard was, because people are going to shrug and say, well, Death Guard's been half of the top 10 for every tournament for 2 years, so big deal, right? But doing it as a Chaos Space Marine or a crew, God forbid, it's gonna earn you a lot more clout and credit. So I agree. There's something to be said for that.
No, definitely. Okay, well, thank you very much, Erik. In that case, did you want to plug anything at all?
Do I want to plug anything?
Yeah, like Warp Charge Gaming or anything.
I just said I look forward to seeing the Adepticon matches. George is most likely. He filmed throughout Adepticon.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing those, definitely. I'm hoping to have George on. I'm gonna shoot him an email, but he's a hard man to track down.
The greatest gentleman in wargaming that I played against, or I didn't get a chance to play against him, but that I've seen play. Sorry, forgive me. Never, and I've talked to other people. He doesn't get salty. He'll play competitively, but he's always a true gentleman and a great person to play against. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like your channel. The guys there are pretty great. So yeah, so people are looking to know like how you act and how you treat players, because we have problems with this occasionally at tournaments. See what happens when George loses on video, right? He's not cutting it. He's not replaying that game. He just says, thanks, I got hot dice, I got cold dice, whatever. He's just fantastic. So if everybody played like that, we'd all be friends and there'd be no rage quitting, anger, or anything else in the tournament.
awesome. Warp Charge Gaming. I think everybody recommends them basically. And anyway, that is the end of our interview with Erik, the man, the myth, the legend of both Tau, Drukhari, and Thousand Suns. The first of all three professionals to visit this channel. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully we will have you back after you've been to Nova or BAO if you're going there, etc. And yes, thank you very much, everybody. This has been Glass Half Dead, and this has been Erik, and we've been coming to you today, whatever day of the week it is. I've got no idea what my schedule looks like. It's crazy. And I hope you've all had a great day, and I hope you'll continue to have a great day. Glass Half Dead, out.